The ceramic lid made a sharp clack as I set my coffee mug down. Too sharp. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a kitchen at 6:13 in the morning, especially when you haven't slept. I kept staring at the Formica countertop anyway, tracing a scratch near the edge with my thumb. It wasn't the mug or the scratch that had me off balance. It was the manila envelope sitting just beside them, creased at the top, already opened, but unopened in every way that mattered. I'd gotten the call the night before, from my older brother of all people. "They're gone," was all he said. Not mom and dad, just they. Like they were a unit, efficient, cold, and complete. It was a car crash. Rain-slick road, early dusk, truck jackknifed 2 lanes over. The kind of accident that gets half a paragraph in the local paper. I didn't even cry. I didn't feel much of anything. That scared me more than the call itself. The envelope came this morning. It wasn't from my brother. It was from their lawyer. Inside was the will. I don't know why I expected anything different. They left everything to Daniel, him and his wife, Natalie. The house, the accounts, the paintings, the old family jewelry, the ceramic dog figurines Mom kept on the windowsill like they were museum pieces. Everything. My name didn't even make it into the footnotes. No, to our second son, Michael. Not even a "we love him," but just absence. A clean white space where I should have been. I picked the envelope up again, like maybe if I turned it over I'd find a secret page, a post-it note, anything. There was nothing. I called Daniel that afternoon. I had to. He picked up like he hadn't just inherited our parents' entire lives. "Mike," he said, casual as ever, "I was just about to call you." "Sure," I said, already tired. "Did you know about the will?" There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Yeah, a little. They talked to me about it a while ago. Said they didn't want to split things, didn't want to complicate matters." "Complicate." "Yeah, legal stuff, taxes, all that." "Right." Another pause. This one stretched. "I didn't agree with it, Mike, he added, "but it was their decision. You know how Dad was." I did. He used to say fairness was a fantasy, especially when money was involved. "But they were your parents too, he said. If you need anything—" "I don't want your money, Daniel." "Wasn't what I meant." "Wasn't it?" Silence. Then, "Look, Mike, I know it's hard, but we should talk about arrangements. The funeral, burial." "I'll take care of it," I said without thinking. "Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Even the headstone?" "Yes." He didn't argue. Of course he didn't. That's how Daniel worked. "Let me take the weight," if I offered. And I always offered. Mom loved marigolds. She planted them every year along the backyard fence where the soil was crap and the sun too harsh. But somehow, they thrived. That was the last thing I thought of before I started searching for headstone companies. The funeral home gave me options, most of them bleak. Polished granite slabs, basic script, optional religious iconography. It all felt industrial, like ordering a tombstone from a vending machine. I picked the most understated one I could find. Gray slate, simple serif font, no angels, no flowers, just Robert and Elaine Whitmore. Beloved parents, partners, and friends. Together in rest. I paid out of pocket. Didn't even ask Daniel for a share. Didn't ask anyone. I kept telling myself it wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about being the better man either. It was about dignity, mine, if not theirs. At the funeral, I stood apart. Daniel and Natalie sat front row, arms linked. A couple of distant cousins whispered behind me. I don't think they even recognized me. The priest read from a laminated sheet, generic words for generic grief. I didn't listen. I kept my eyes on the coffin, wondering what they'd think if they could see this. Not the ceremony, Me, standing alone, wearing the same navy suit I wore to my last job interview. When it was over, people trickled out like smoke. No one offered condolences. No one asked why I stood by myself. I was glad for that. The only moment that caught me off guard was when Natalie passed me near the church doors. She paused just long enough to meet my eyes and say, "They talked about you more than you think." I don't know what that meant. Still don't. I nodded. Then I left. The stone arrived 6 weeks later. The cemetery called to let me know they'd placed it. I drove out the same day. It was raining. Not the heavy kind, just the slow, annoying drizzle that gets into your collar and makes you smell like wet laundry for hours. There were no flowers on the grave, no trinkets, no cards, just the stone. I crouched next to it, ran my hand over the etched letters. The rain made the slate darker, like it had just been carved. I stayed there longer than I expected, not crying, not talking, just existing. After a while, I stood, pulled the hood of my jacket up, turned to leave. Then I hesitated. I pulled something from my pocket. An old photograph. Me and Daniel. Halloween. I was Batman. He was Robin. We were 5 and 7, maybe. Mom had written the year on the back. I didn't say anything as I tucked it behind the headstone, protected in a plastic sleeve. Just a small thing. For me. Not for them. I didn't go back to the grave for a while. It's not that I forgot. You don't forget the kind of silence that headstone leaves in your chest. It's more like the air gets thinner around certain memories, and it's easier to breathe somewhere else. But the question started gnawing at me. Why? Why was I left out? I'd made peace, so I thought, with the idea that we weren't a close family. But being erased? That takes a different kind of cruelty. It wasn't money I wanted. It was acknowledgement. Proof I mattered at all. So I started digging. Not into dirt. Into people. Into memories. My first stop was Aunt Linda. She lived in the next town over, in one of those low ranch-style houses with fake shutters and wind chimes that tinkle like gilt. I hadn't seen her since Mom's birthday 3 years back. Even then, we barely spoke. She opened the door wearing slippers and a stained Red Lobster sweatshirt. No makeup. Her hair still had curlers in the back. "Michael?" She blinked. "What are you doing here?" "I need to ask you something." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside smelled like lemon pine sol and cigarette regret. I sat on the vinyl couch. She took the recliner. The plastic cover on the lamp next to her was still there after 15 years. "What is it?" "Do you know why Mom and Dad left me out of the will?" Her eyes didn't flicker. That's what I noticed first. "I figured Daniel told you," she said. "He said they didn't want to split things." She gave a small scoff, like someone tasting spoiled milk. "Elaine used to talk about you, you know." "When?" "More than you think. Usually after wine. Or if something reminded her of your apartment. She hated that place, by the way." "Yeah," I said, dry. "She made that clear. She thought you were wasting your potential. Said you never came back home. Like she expected you to orbit around them forever." I leaned forward. "Did she ever say she didn't want me in the will?" Linda picked at the hem of her sleeve. "Not in those words, but she once told me, 'Daniel stayed, Michael left.'" "That's it?" "She thought Daniel earned it. Being near. Being dependable." I let that sit. It itched more than it hurt. "She ever talk about that time I covered their medical bills?" Linda blinked. "What medical bills?" "Figures." I left with more ache than answers. Drove past my old high school just for the hell of it. The sign out front still blinked too fast. Something about the class of '07 reunion. I didn't stop. Instead, I went home and pulled out a box from the back of my closet. One I hadn't opened since I moved into this apartment. Inside were fragments, old birthday cards, a program from Dad's retirement party, a dried marigold in a Ziploc bag. I don't remember saving it. And a letter from my mom, unopened. It was dated 4 years ago. The return address was their old house. I don't know why I never saw it before. Maybe it got buried in a pile of bills. Maybe I couldn't face it then. My hands shook opening it, not from nerves, just something colder. Inside, just a single sheet. Michael, I know you won't read this for a while. I'm writing because I'm tired of holding things in my chest. Remind me so much of your father when you were younger. Hard-working, stubborn, proud. You wanted everything to be fair. But life's not like that. You left when things got hard. And I don't blame you. I really don't. But I can't ignore how Daniel stayed. He came by every Sunday, fixed the fence, took your father to his appointments, sat with me when my hands hurt too much to hold a teacup. You send money. And I'm grateful. But it's not the same. I don't love him more than you. I just see him more. That's not fair either, is it? Love, Mom. I read it twice. Then I read it again. The anger didn't come the way I expected. Instead, I felt small, like I was standing in the corner of a memory too big for me to carry. She hadn't hated me. She'd just lost sight of me, and maybe I let her. Maybe I stopped showing up before they stopped caring, but still, does distance cancel love? Does silence nullify blood? I called Daniel again. Hey, he answered, cautious this time. I found Mom's letter, I said. Long pause. Yeah? She said you were there more. That's why they left everything to you. I didn't ask them to do that. I know. Another silence. You want some of it? He offered. The inheritance, the estate, the payout. I almost said yes, just to make a point. But I said no. It wasn't nobility. It was clarity. I didn't need their money. I needed to understand. And I was beginning to. A week later, I got a call from a guy named Terrence. Said he was my dad's old friend from the VFW. Said he heard about the funeral. Said he had something he wanted to give me. We met at a diner, one of those old chrome ones with sticky menus and a waitress named Barb. Terrence looked like a man carved out of gravel. He slid a shoebox across the table. Your dad wanted you to have this, he said. Yes, he said. I opened it. Inside, a pocket knife, a cracked photo of us fishing at Arrow Lake, a flask with my initials engraved, and a note. Mikey, you got more of me in you than you know. Sorry I couldn't say it better while I was around. Dad. I sat there for a long time. The waitress came by twice, asked if I was okay. I wasn't, but I would be, eventually. The thing about growing up in a house you're later shut out of, it's not the stuff that haunts you. It's the creaks in the floor that your body still remembers. The chipped banister you ran your hand along every morning before school. The smell of burnt toast in the fall. When Dad always got distracted reading the paper. Daniel invited me over to go through some things, he said. What he didn't say, but I heard loud and clear, was that it was now his house. I pulled up in front of the place around noon, midweek, quiet street, same maple tree in the yard, its roots still buckling the sidewalk like an old man's knuckles. Daniel greeted me at the door like a host at a dinner party. Glad you all came, he said. I gave him a nod. My hands were in my pockets. I hadn't even realized I'd balled them into fists until I felt my nails in my palms. The house was cleaner than I remembered. New paint on the walls. Some of the furniture was gone. No more floral couches. No more heavy glass coffee table you had to walk around like a minefield. Where's the grandfather clock, I asked, stepping inside. Sold it, he said. Didn't work anymore. Natalie hated the ticking. I wanted to argue. That clock had been in our family for generations, but I didn't. It wasn't my place. Literally. He led me upstairs to the attic. It was cooler than I remembered. Maybe he finally fixed the insulation. A few boxes sat against the back wall. My name was scrawled across one of them in Mom's handwriting. I froze. It hit me harder than the funeral, harder than the will. They'd kept something of mine. Daniel knelt beside the box and popped it open. Inside, my high school yearbook, a few sketch pads from when I thought I'd be an artist, a medal from a science fair I barely remembered, and then, at the bottom, folded neatly in tissue paper, my baby blanket, blue and frayed, smelled faintly of cedar and dust. "They kept it?" I said, barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. "I didn't even know they had it." Mom found it when they cleaned out the basement a few years ago. She said, "He always slept better when he had this." I had to sit down. Right there, on the attic floor. Daniel sat too. Neither of us said much for a while. Then he cleared his throat. "They weren't perfect," he said, "but I think they loved you in the only way they knew how." I nodded, but I wasn't ready to believe it yet. Not fully. On my way out, I stopped in the hallway outside what used to be my room. He'd turned it into an office. Gone were the posters, the twin bed, the squeaky dresser. In their place, a desk, 2 monitors, a bookshelf lined with law books he probably never read. I walked in anyway. The only thing left from before was a single photograph on the shelf. Me, Daniel, and our dad, standing beside the old green pickup, sun in our eyes, all squinting, grinning like idiots. I took the photo off the shelf. "Do you mind?" I asked. Daniel shook his head. "It's yours." It felt like getting back one small piece of something I didn't even know I missed. Outside, he walked me to my car. "You still mad at me?" he asked. "No," I said, "not at you. But at them? Some days." He nodded, like he understood. Before I got in the car, he said, "They should have told you they were proud." "I should have told them I needed to hear it," I replied. The next day, I got a voicemail from Natalie. She thanked me for the headstone, for showing up, for not fighting about the will. Said it meant a lot to Daniel. Said she wished things had gone differently. I didn't call back. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know how to explain what I felt. A few nights later, I dreamed about the house, only it wasn't Daniel's version. It was ours. Mom in the kitchen, humming while she burned toast. Dad yelling at the TV, Daniel and I on the floor, building something with plastic bricks we'd never finish. And me, just me. Not absent, not forgotten, just there, like I always wanted to be. When I woke up, I pulled out the photo from the attic again, framed it, put it by the window, next to the envelope with Mom's letter, next to the box with Dad's knife and flask. None of it was worth anything to anyone else. But to me, it was the will they never wrote. I didn't plan on going back to the storage unit, but there was a message on my voicemail from the facility's front office. Something about final disposition of remaining items. Turns out, Mom and Dad had rented the unit under both their names, and Daniel had already taken what he wanted. The rest, mine if I wanted it, or landfill bound by next Friday. I called in a personal day from work. Told my boss it was family matters. He didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. That Friday, I stood in front of Unit 114, metal roll-up door, padlock already unlatched, just waiting. I hesitated. The last time I opened a storage unit like this was when I was moving out of college. Back then, everything inside had felt like a beginning. This one felt like an ending. I lifted the door. It smelled like cardboard and old varnish. 3 tall stacks of boxes, an antique trunk, 2 mismatched chairs, and a faded garment bag hung on a rolling rack. Nothing else? Nothing valuable. just the bones of a life no one wanted to keep. I started with the garment bag. Inside was Dad's Navy suit, the one he wore to every wedding, funeral, and retirement party. Still had a faint smell of his cologne, Old Spice, and something woody. And next to it, my old Boy Scout uniform. I held it up by the shoulders. It looked like it belonged to a child I barely remembered. There was a patch on the sleeve Mom had sewn on crooked, and I never fixed it. I folded it carefully and set it aside. The antique trunk was locked, but the key was still taped to the bottom, just like Dad used to do. Inside were photo albums, real ones, with glue-stuck corners, and pages that smelled like a decade gone. Most of the photos were familiar. Holidays, camping trips, Mom holding a sparkler on the 4th of July. But tucked in the back, there was a section I didn't recognize. Pictures of me. Me at a science fair. Me playing the trumpet at the school winter concert. Me in a hospital bed, age 11, with a sprained ankle and a cookie in my lap. Someone had written on the backs of each one, sometimes just a date, sometimes a full sentence. Michael's first solo. M stayed up all night before this one. He didn't cry when they set the bone. I sat down on one of the old chairs and let that hit me. I thought they hadn't paid attention. I thought they'd forgotten me in real time. But they saw me. They just didn't always know how to say it. One of the boxes was labeled letters in Dad's handwriting. Inside were dozens of envelopes, cards, notes, newspaper clippings with little scribbles in the margins, and at the very bottom, an envelope addressed to me. My full name, Michael James Whitmore. The flap wasn't sealed. I opened it. Inside, "Son, I figured if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Not much for writing, you know that. But I owe you something I didn't say enough. I'm sorry I was hard on you. You were always more like me than I wanted to admit. And maybe that's why we butted heads. I thought if I pushed you, you'd push back. I thought that was love. It wasn't. I know now that you didn't leave to run away. You left to build your own thing. And you did. I heard about the promotion. Mom bragged about you at church more than you'd believe. I don't know why we didn't say it straight. Maybe we just didn't have the words. But I was proud. Even if we didn't put it in the will. We put it in the walls, the pictures, the stories. You were never out of it. Dad. I must have sat there for 30 minutes holding that letter in my lap, reading and rereading until the words felt like breath. It didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open. That night I called Daniel, told him what I found. He was quiet for a while, then said, "I think Dad didn't know how to say things unless he wrote them down." "Guess that makes two of us," I said. "I still have some of his old journals," Daniel offered, "if you ever want to read through them." "Yeah, I do." Silence hung there a moment longer. Then he said, "Thank you for not hating me. I never hated you. You had every right to." "No," I said. "I had every reason to be angry, but not at you." We made a plan to meet the following week. Just the two of us. No lawyers, no bitterness, just two brothers finally talking. That weekend, I went back to the grave. It was sunny this time, warm breeze, birds chirping somewhere beyond the fence line. I brought marigolds, planted them myself. It wasn't for forgiveness, and it wasn't for closure. It was just mine. The first time I went back into my childhood church wasn't for a wedding or a funeral. It was for an auction. Daniel and I had found a few of Mom's oil paintings stored away in one of the crawl spaces under the stairs. Forgotten, dust-covered, but still vibrant beneath the grime. She never sold them. She said they were too personal, but she never threw them away either. We decided to donate them to the church's community fundraiser, not for attention, not even for legacy, but because some things don't belong in boxes. The pastor recognized me when I stepped inside. Michael Whitmore, he said, smiling like it hurt a little. Your mother used to say you had the best singing voice in the youth choir. I laughed under my breath. She also used to say I was tone deaf. She said that too, he grinned. The paintings sold quickly. One of them, a faded landscape of the lake near our old cabin, sparked a small bidding war. I watched it unfold from the back pew, hands in my lap, feeling like a stranger in a story I used to be part of. Daniel nudged me. She'd be proud. Yeah, I said. Maybe. No maybe about it, he replied. Later that evening, we drove to Arrow Lake. No plan, no agenda, just muscle memory. The dock was still there, though the boards looked older, weather-stained. We sat on the edge, like we used to, tossed a few pebbles into the water, watched the ripples fade. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out Dad's old flask, the one I'd left him after Terrence gave it to me. I figured you should have this, he said. I took it, nodded. No words needed. Remember the fishing trip where Dad let the boat drift and we thought we were lost? He said. We weren't lost, I grinned. He was asleep. We both laughed. It was the first time in years that our laughter didn't feel forced. Back home, I started writing more. Not books, not essays, letters to people who were still here. I wrote one to Daniel, left it on his porch in an envelope with his name in blocky handwriting. I wrote one to Natalie, thanking her for being decent when it mattered most. I even wrote one to myself, 11-year-old Michael with a sprained ankle and a cookie in his lap, telling him he was going to be okay, even if it didn't feel like it. And I wrote one more. Dear Mom and Dad, I don't know if this counts as forgiveness, but I'm not angry anymore. I found your notes, your photos, your blanket, and medals and crooked patches. I found the parts of me you didn't forget. You just didn't know how to show it. And I found something else too, your quiet apologies. I think I needed to read them more than I ever needed to hear them. I wish we'd talked more. I wish I'd told you how scared I was, how invisible I felt when I left, how hard I tried to keep my distance without making it feel like punishment. But mostly, I wish I'd asked you why. Now I know. You thought Daniel stayed because he loved you. You thought I left because I didn't. But the truth is, we both loved you in our own ways. I just didn't come back in time to show you mine. Still, I paid for the headstone. Not because I wanted credit, but because I needed to say, you mattered to me, even when I didn't matter to you the way I needed. Michael. The next week, I went back to the cemetery one last time. I brought nothing with me. No letter, no flowers, just a thermos of coffee and a folding chair. I sat in front of the headstone for nearly an hour. Didn't cry. Didn't talk. Didn't feel the urge to. The stone wasn't a place of grief anymore. It was a place of memory. And for the first time, I wasn't just a visitor. I was a son again. No will could undo that. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.